Sarah, what did the people really show up virtually to Jesse Minter's press conference for? Okay, I'm sure there were a number of reasons as to why, but everybody knows that the Ravens go as Lamar Jackson goes.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship, even though Jesse's expertise is on the defensive side of the ball, the relationship between head coach and quarterback will be significant, much like the offensive coordinator and quarterback relationship will be. And that's something that right out of the gate, well, both were talked about. We'll get to the coordinator search in just a second. But right out of the gate, Jesse was asked about his relationship with Lamar. And this, I think, Sarah, is where the humility, transparency, honesty, and even his vision started to really shine through. Here is Jesse on QB1 and a two-time MVP.
And I have had multiple conversations. It's been great. It's been great to get to know him. I think relationships take time. And so you don't become the head coach of the Ravens and expect to have a deep relationship with anybody. So those take time. We've been working towards that already. We've had wonderful conversations. Look forward to many, many more. But Lamar, I just look forward to connecting with him, helping him become the best version of himself, creating a team identity that allows him to thrive, which he's already proven to be an elite, one of the best player in the National Football League. And put a team around him that allows him to reach that ultimate goal of bringing a Super Bowl back to Baltimore.
They were in the building for 3 years, Sarah. Lamar was drafted, as you know, in 2018. And that offseason was Jesse's his first actual offseason as an employee, because he was a defensive assistant in 2017 and then spent 18, 19, and 20. So Lamar's first 3 years in the league, including the wonderful run that was their regular season 14-2 dominance in 2019, Jesse had a front row seat to all that. So there is a level of familiarity. But what I meant by humility is, look, there may be a relationship, and maybe it's just cordial. I don't know. But the fact that they've spoken multiple times already to Jesse's thoughts here since this hiring was official, today's Thursday, so it's been a week today, shows you that, one, Lamar's been involved. Don't know if it's ever been in person to date, but he's been involved. There is a level of familiarity. And now Jesse understands that, hey, it's up to him. And ultimately, it's going to be a two-way street to get that relationship to a point where there's a level of trust, cohesion, transparency, and start to work together. And of course, the offensive coordinator will be a big deal in terms of that hire as well.
Yeah, it'll be up to both of them, not just Jesse, right? That's what relationships are. It has to be a two-way street. So when he says relationships take time, that's true with everybody. But that's especially true with Lamar. Lamar Jackson, from what I know of him, covering him since he's been in the NFL, is Lamar will always lead with respect. He's going to lead with respect. He's going to give you your respect. He's going to give you professionalism. He's going to do all that. But his trust has got to be earned. And that takes time. And I think even Eric DaCosta is still always, thinking about that in the back of his head, especially as they do contract negotiations the second time around. And so I couldn't help but remember, Bobby, on the collective when Jeff Zrebiec was talking with you and Cole, and where he said, he's like, I'm not going to get deep into like the Monken Lamar Jackson relationship, but he certainly essentially said, or was giving the impression that maybe Todd Monken could have been a little bit much for Lamar. Like a little bit, because Todd is Todd. Todd's transparent. He's loud. He's in your face. He pulls no punches, and he treats everyone the same. So that's why he's super cool with reporters. I know he'll text with you. He'll treat you, and he'll treat Lamar kind of the same, right? Just like everybody's the same. And I remember Jeff saying that perhaps an offensive coordinator like Cliff Kingsbury, who's a little bit more laid back, might jive a little better with Lamar. Again, I'm not saying that Lamar and Monken had a bad relationship. I'm not saying that. I think that's what sometimes national media or others try to twist it into. But sometimes like that chemistry isn't quite there. And so I was thinking of that description from Jeff when he was saying maybe a more calm personality like Cliff would be good for Lamar. Well, that's what Jesse came across to as to me also. So when I was saying that when you compare his press conference to like John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh goes to the Big Apple, and he just like pounds his chest. He's like charismatic. He sells the whole room. It's just like so much energy and energetic. Whereas I felt like Jesse was just he's just more calm. He's not like that. And so it reminded me, Jeff talking about it. I'm just wondering if this personality dynamic, like, don't get me wrong, you still, whatever personality you have, you got to be great with the X's and O's and the scheme and all that kind of stuff. But is this a personality match that might click a little bit better and might have a little bit more chemistry, might have a little bit more trust with Lamar Jackson? And I'm sure time will tell. But I think Jesse not rushing it and knowing that it's going to take time is probably helpful to Lamar, who really values and doesn't give out his trust to just anybody.
And what does his demeanor and overall personality evolve into when the cameras aren't on? Meaning Jesse, right? Because this is your first introductory press conference as the head coach of the Baltimore Ravens, with a ton of national, regional, local media staring back at you with their cameras. There's people in the back. There's people in front of you, right, left, you name it. And so, hey, somebody asked, like, and this was Derwin James, I think others as well. You were referred to as an alpha from some of your players with the Chargers. It's not exactly how we remembered you, speaking to some that knew him from 2017 to 2020 in Baltimore. So, if he is indeed an alpha, what does that look like behind the scenes? What does that look like in his one-on-ones, his future one-on-ones, his difficult conversations that are inevitably coming ahead of him, not only with Lamar, but with his entire player community moving forward. So, but I'm with you though. There's a level of soft-spokenness to Jesse, but don't confuse that with a lack of confidence.
No, not at all.
Don't confuse that with, and to speaking generally, don't confuse that with a lack of knowledge, with a lack of alpha mentality in him, because I think I'll take the players at their word in Los Angeles for that. And even Jimmy Smith a couple weeks ago, when I was trying to refamiliarize myself with Jesse, I asked him, what do you remember from those years? And he's like, look, even then, he got up there and commanded a room with the players. And before the game, he's one of those dudes, Mike Mack as well, that me as a veteran, I kind of pull him inside and be like, hey, what kind of nuggets you got for me before going into game day?
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
It'll be nice to see, and it'll be interesting to see how his demeanor, whether it be what we learn of him behind the camera or what we see of him in front of the camera, how that evolves through year one.
I'm still learning Jesse, but I get the feeling that the way he commands a room is with substance. You know what I mean? Not just like the phrases. Like sometimes we'll get clips. Like how many clips did we show? Like the Jaguars coach Campanile, right? And we put up him talking to his players, maybe from like a Hard Knocks or a Wired or whatever. And he just has like all the right words. He's saying violence over and over and over again. And, a butt whooping. Everybody knows a butt whooping, whether you're in Greece or you're in America or you're somewhere else. And like just the way he talked. That's not Jesse. I just have a feeling he commands his room when he's got substance behind what he's gonna say. And that's why Jimmy was like, oh, you always go back to Jesse to get a couple more nuggets to just give me that edge over my opponent. And I think that's what I saw in him today when he started talking more football. That's when his passion started coming out.
Maybe Kyle Van Noy said it best a couple weeks ago when he was on the McAfee show. He's like, today's player, they're not looking for leader of men. We'll lead ourselves. We'll have those alphas in the player community in the locker room, and they'll handle that on a natural basis. And the cream of the crop will rise to the top. What we want is X's and O's. We want guys that understand it. So speaking to your point, the substantive part of Jesse Minter, his expertise, his X's and O's, to use Steve Bisciotti's terms in his statement when this was ultimately come down a week ago, his football acumen, his resume, his familiarity with the program, with Baltimore, with what he's accomplished already at the NFL at a defensive level. Like, that's what players want. And if Kyle's onto something, then they have their guy.
And before we fully move on from Lamar, Eric DaCosta was asked specifically about Lamar and his involvement, but he also asked about players in general. And Eric DeCosta didn't really address Lamar specifically. He just kind of like brushed over that. He said, quote, "We had a small group of players kind of split evenly on offense and defense. We had some guys on Zoom, some guys that were in person. They met with him. They met with all the finalists." And then he went on and said that some of the players are still involved in the interview process with the coordinator interviews. So he never really addressed Lamar. I would have liked it if he did, just because you'll have people who want to push, their narratives. And I don't know if he was involved via Zoom, just say, yeah, he was involved via Zoom. Maybe he wanted to stay down there. I have a feeling that's my guess. That's my guess, is that he was involved via Zoom. I think my preference would have been that he was there today. I don't know what Lamar's got going on in his life. I don't know what family things he has or anything like that. So who knows? And so not knowing that, there might be reasons for it, but I think I would have preferred if he had been here today. I think we saw a lot of reporters report who was in the audience. I don't think Lamar was mentioned, was he?
No.
Okay, yeah. So listen, that would have been cool. Like, you help welcome your head coach. Now, do I think it's going to make a major impact? Do I think that's going to decide football games come September, October, December, January? No. But I think it would have been a nice gesture, as a leader of the team. And again, maybe Lamar had stuff going on, but I think it would have been a nice gesture. And I know that we all said, when like Steve Bisciotti was like, "Here's my jet if you want to go up," we all said, hey, we kind of hope that Lamar will take him up on that. And I don't know. We haven't heard anything since, but I just get the feeling that if he had, maybe we would have been told that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is your presence on a day like today as the franchise guy goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
And does it come down to affect winning games, several months from now, to your point? No. But if it's an indication that he'll kind of continue to do his own thing in the offseason, particularly when it comes around to voluntary OTA times, and I won't go that far yet, but that has been the case, at least in here and there over the years, then, I think it's a new era. It's a new era of Ravens football. It's a new head coach. There'll be a new offensive coordinator, perhaps new wrinkles of scheme being implemented. You want your franchise guy there as much as possible. So
yeah, and I don't think it's like,
when we get there.
I guarantee other people will blow it out of proportion. I can already envision the Nick Wrights of the world and everybody else doing that. I don't think it's like a terrible thing, nothing like that. It's just a preference that I would have had to just a nice gesture is all.
Yeah, and you know what?
But Lamar can do what Lamar wants to do.
At the end of the day, it's not required, much like attendance at OTAs are not required. But knowing that you are the face of the franchise, sometimes what's not required can be expected by some within the fan base and other areas. We'll see what he chooses to do this offseason. Obviously, first and foremost, once free agency comes around, you're going to want to get that extension done more so than anything else, that you can start to team build and get this place in a position, Sarah, so that Jesse Minter can put his best foot forward from a personnel standpoint, knowing that they filled as many voids as they possibly could, and that Eric DeCosta was able to allocate, and accomplish this upcoming offseason. Now, we'll continue with the player personnel side of things, because the Lamar Jackson on the defensive side of the ball, we all know who that is. It's Kyle Hamilton, and Kyle was drafted in 2022, so there was no overlap between the two, meaning Jesse he wasn't here then. He was out getting after his coaching career. But now he's going to have a chance to work directly and closely with what he refers to as, I'll let him speak for himself.
He is a positionless defensive player that I would classify as a weapon on defense. And so as much as you can do to get a guy like Kyle near the point of attack, I think is what you try to do as a designer, play caller. And so could not be more thrilled to be able to work with Kyle. I've had a couple really good conversations with him already, and I know he's excited, and I'm excited to work with him alongside all the really great players that we have in this organization.
A weapon, Sarah. A weapon. That he is, and that he has been since the day he showed up to Baltimore.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see what Jesse can do with him. I'm really, really excited to see. I just obviously 2 years ago, they really, in Zach Orr's first year as a defensive coordinator, they had to move him back to be more of a free safety. again, and they couldn't use him at the line of scrimmage or the point of attack like Jesse is just talking about. So having the personnel around to at least to even allow either Zach or Jesse Minter to put him at the point of attack, they really couldn't do that. He had to go save the defense by going back. This last year, they were able to do that again when they traded for Alohi Gilman and they had Malachi Starks. And then in the end, even Darius Washington came back. So hopefully, Eric DeCosta and the team are able to give the personnel that really opens things up for Jesse to scheme this. I have a lot of confidence that Jesse will be able to put something together that's pretty nice for Kyle Hamilton and will really be able to highlight him and others on the team. So I look forward to that. On another note, it's always asked like hierarchy, right? Who reports to whom? And again, John Harbaugh's contract held up for a couple of days because he wanted to make that clear. He wanted to make sure he was not reporting to the GM, that he was reporting to the owner. And if they had a stalemate on who to draft or other things, John Harbaugh wanted to have the ultimate say. And I think ultimately he got it. So that begs the question in Baltimore, because in Baltimore, John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta both reported to Steve Bisciotti, the owner. And so Eric DeCosta was asked about that. Will that continue? And Eric DeCosta said, quote, "We had a lot of success in a situation where both the head coach and the GM reported to the owner. We won 2 Super Bowls that way, and we've won a lot of games that way. We believe in that system, working together, fighting together, and figuring things out together." So that's it. Both Jesse and Eric DeCosta, and I assume Sashi Brown, because that's the way it was when I was working there, the president will all 3 report to Steve Bisciotti.
And now, who's going to be reporting to Jesse Minter? The coordinators, the rest of his staff, and an update on all that, because that's what everybody cares about right now. Who's going to be the offensive coordinator? Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? And what is the rest of your staff? How is it shaking out? He wasn't going to go as far as to give any names or confirm anything, Sarah, but he did give shed a little bit of light in terms of what he's looking for.
I won't confirm any hires at this point. Both of those searches are going really well. They're very far along, I would say. We're finalizing a few of those pieces. I'm looking for leaders and connectors and relationship builders and schematic expertise. But most importantly, guys, that the players believe in, that they're willing to dive deep and build real strong relationships with the players. I think when they feel that it's collaborative and they feel that it's ours and not just the coaches, and this is what the players do, this is what the coaches do, it's all of us. And so I'm excited about the people involved in those searches right now, and I look forward to sharing those in the near future.
And one of them who might be involved, Sarah, is a guy that we learned of earlier today who's a pretty sought-after candidate. A bunch of different teams are looking at Broncos defensive pass game coordinator and assistant head coach, former NFL safety, Jim Leonard, for their defensive coordinator job. So I believe this is the 3rd team so far that's looking at him in recent days, Buffalo and the Chargers being the other 2. So, hey, he played in Baltimore in 2008, has some familiarity here. The Chargers are taking a look at him, like I mentioned. He's had a lot of success in Denver. Pretty much the entire staff on the defensive side of the ball, Sarah, in Denver have had success under Sean Payton in recent years. But this was a player who had a pretty good career. He was an undrafted free safety out of Wisconsin back in 2005. Began his career with Buffalo, spent 2008, like I mentioned, in Baltimore, some time with the Jets, Broncos, Saints, and Browns as well, and then immediately got into coaching after his career finished as a player at his alma mater in Wisconsin in 2016, and he's been with the Broncos organization since 2024. So that's the latest. But in terms of the other side of the ball, I know everybody, including yourself, including myself, kind of waiting on pins and needles here until this hire is made and ultimately announced. And you are currently muted there, my friend.
There we go. I had a cough.
Getting yourself right. I know.
Sure. I know. There we go. Anyway, I just wonder how much, just like we've talked about how it's an advantage for offensive coordinators to come here because they actually get to call plays. It's the opposite on the defensive side because we just got it. Jesse just confirmed he will be doing the defensive play calls. He says that's his strength, and that's part of the reason why he's here today. So I just wonder how all that will play into it because as you mentioned, Leonard has also interviewed for the Bills, and they just hired their former offensive coordinator to become the head coach. So he's really going to need to lean into a defensive coordinator to just totally take over. So you'd think that might be more appealing to Jim Leonard, but we shall see. Who knows what kind of influence Jesse can have over this, and maybe talk him into coming here. But is that the first defensive coordinator candidate we've really heard about? We've talked nonstop about offensive coordinators. Remind me if there's other defensive coordinator candidates that's been reported.
Joe Cullen. Joe Cullen's been
He
one.
wasn't for defensive line?
No, he was.
Okay.
I mean, it was reported as defensive coordinator.
Okay.
And by the way, I mentioned, the 3-team race kind of that is in on Jim Leonard. Technically, as of earlier today, when this news came down, or I guess late last night, maybe it's just a 2-team race. I guess you could still call it a third, because I'm sure Denver doesn't want to lose him either, Jim Leonard. But the Chargers already hired their defensive coordinator, so I should have mentioned that a minute ago. Chris O'Leary from Western Michigan is being hired as the Chargers' new defensive coordinator under Jim Harbaugh. Started his coaching career at Notre Dame. He was how about this? He was the safeties coach under Jesse Minter in 2024. So perhaps the Ravens might have been interested in bringing him to the organization, but he is going from Western Michigan, where he spent just this past season after being the Chargers safeties coach in 24 under Jesse. He's going back to LA now to be the defensive play caller. So maybe it's a 2-team race, or maybe you can still refer to it as a 3-team race with Denver being included in there. And I'm sure trying to keep Jim Leonard on their staff.
Yeah. Yeah. But
to answer your question, though, other than Joe Cullen, other than Jim Leonard, and maybe the chat can help us out here, I don't know if there's any other names that are out there privy to the public in terms of who they might be looking at.
Yeah,
chat, you can help us out. But yeah,
because offensive coordinator, obviously, offensive coordinator is going to be much more important given that Jesse's the head coach. But we've just had candidate after candidate being talked about. So
Sarah, maybe you could put Anthony Weaver in that category, but you brought him in for the head coach role. He's still involved with.
There's been no report that he's specifically eyeing the coordinator job in Baltimore.
No, there hasn't. And so, yeah.
You know how rough this has to be for Anthony Weaver?
I know.
He's been on the staff with all these guys.
I know.
He was on the staff. He's just watching young guys like Jesse just leapfrog him, or Mike McDonald, or Zach Orr. And now did John Harbaugh hire his defensive coordinator in New York yet?
He's got Denard. He's got Denard.
So Denard passed over Anthony. Man.
Yeah, I know.
What stinks is I love Weave. He's great.
I know. You feel for him. It's a part of it. It's a rough part of the business. Rough part. There's still 2 vacancies out there that remain, right? You've got Vegas and you've got Arizona. But I'm sure, can you imagine a scenario in which Philip Rivers? Can you imagine a scenario? That's what I get for looking at the live chat while trying to formulate a thought. Can you imagine a scenario in which Clint Kubiak doesn't get one of those jobs? I can't. So
right.
So yeah, for Weaver, it's starting to get a little bit tight down the line here. So that Weave
has got to put together a signature defensive season. I think that's hurting him.
Probably
because he's a great guy. He's there's nothing to not like about him, and his personality and his leadership and his ability to be the face of a franchise, all of that. But he's got to have a signature defense like some of these other guys have had.
I wish him the best in trying to get that done. He's got to get a defensive coordinator job before all is said and done too, if he's not going to be a head coach. So that'll be something to watch there. But as far as the Lamar Jackson, Kyle Hamilton, and MVPs of each side of the ball respectively goes, that's how Jesse Minter handled that part of the press conference earlier this afternoon.